Gears of War came out in 2006, and to be honest, most of you probably didn't play it on day one. You were too busy with Halo 3 or Guitar Hero. But what's certain is that it changed everything about third-person shooters. Before Gears, cover was just something you hid behind when you were about to die. After Gears, cover became the entire foundation of combat, and honestly, every action game since has borrowed something from what Epic Games created on the Xbox 360.
This franchise proved that you could make grown men cry over a robot sidekick that chainsaws belonged on assault rifles, and that sometimes the best way to save humanity is to just roadie run straight into hell. And I mean everything. Gears of War 2006, the game that started it all. Gears of War came out in November 2006 and was the Xbox 360 exclusive that made PlayStation owners genuinely jealous. You play as Marcus Fenix, a disgraced soldier pulled out of prison to help humanity's last stand against the Locust Horde, underground monsters that erupted on Emergence Day and decimated human civilization. Alongside Dominic Santiago, Augustus Coltrane Cole, and Damon Baird, you fight through the ruins of Sarah in missions like Fork in the Road, and the iconic Berserker encounter where you literally have to guide a blind, nearly invincible monster into explosive barrels using the Hammer of Dawn satellite weapon. The story was simple but effective. Big tough guys with emotional depth fighting literal monsters emerging from the ground. And honestly, it worked, because these weren't just generic space marines. These were broken men fighting a war they were already losing. Gameplay innovation. This is where everything changed. The cover system wasn't revolutionary because it existed. It was revolutionary because it was mandatory. You couldn't run and gun like in Halo or Doom. You had to think tactically, move from cover to cover, and the famous roadie run became as iconic as the Master Chief's jump. The Lancer assault rifle with its chainsaw bayonet wasn't just a cool weapon. It was a statement about what this franchise would be. When you revved that chainsaw and cut through a locust in half, covered in blood, it announced that Gears was going to be brutally visceral in ways that other console exclusives weren't. What about multiplayer? 8 players. That's it. But those 8 players on maps like Gridlock, Canals, and Fuel Depot created some of the most intense competitive experiences of the Xbox 360 era. The Nasher shotgun battles became legendary. Perfectly timed wall bouncing and point-blank shotgun duels that separated the veterans from the newcomers. And honestly, the community was screaming into their mics from day one, because when you got chainsawed by someone who wall bounced around 3 corners, you had to respect the skill even as you threw your controller. Gears of War proved that the Xbox 360 could have hardcore exclusives that rivaled anything on PC or PlayStation. It sold over 6 million copies and became Xbox's answer to Sony's blockbuster exclusives. The cover-based shooter became a template that everyone from Dead Space to The Last of Us would borrow from. Gears of War 2, 2008. Bigger, badder, more badass.
Gears of War 2 launched in November 2008 with the tagline, "Bigger, badder, more badass," and somehow lived up to all 3 promises. Story campaign. 6 months after the Light Mass Offensive, Marcus and Dom launch Operation Hollow Storm, a direct assault into the Locust tunnels. But this time, the story got personal. Dom's searching for his wife Maria, and when you finally find her in that Locust torture chamber, transformed into a hollow shell of herself, Dom's mercy killing became one of gaming's most devastating emotional moments. You fight through the intestines of a giant worm called the Riftworm, battle on the back of moving platforms called derricks, and face the Locust Queen herself. The scope was massive, literally fighting inside a giant creature while trying to sink the Locust city of Nexus. Everything was bigger. More enemies on screen, larger set pieces, and new weapons like the flamethrower and the mortars. The chainsaw duels added a timing mechanic that turned Lancer battles into high-stakes quick-time events. Meat shields let you grab downed enemies as human shields, brutal and tactical. Multiplayer? 10 players instead of 8, but more importantly, this introduced Horde mode. 50 waves of increasingly difficult enemies with fortifications you could build between rounds. Horde mode became the template for every co-op survival mode that followed, from Call of Duty's Zombies to Destiny's various survival modes.
The competitive multiplayer expanded with new maps like River, Security, and Pavilion. But honestly, everyone was spending their time in Horde mode because it scratched the same itch as the campaign's best moments while letting you play with friends. Gears 2 proved that sequels could be bigger and better. It sold over 6 million copies in its first month and dominated Xbox Live. The emotional weight of Dom's story elevated the entire franchise. These weren't just meathead soldiers anymore. They were broken people fighting for something beyond just survival. Gears of War 3, 2011, The Perfect Conclusion. Gears of War 3 released in September 2011 and was the conclusion that the Marcus Fenix trilogy deserved. 18 months after Gears 2, humanity is scattered across islands, trying to survive both the remaining Locust forces and a new threat, the Lambent. Locust infected by emulsion that explode when killed. Marcus discovers that his father, Dr. Adam Fenix, might still be alive and holds the key to ending both the Locust and Lambent threats forever. The emotional climax comes when Dom Santiago sacrifices himself to save the team in the Brothers to the End sequence, crashing a fuel truck into a massive Lambent stalks while Gary Jules' Mad World plays. People who had been playing as Dom since 2006 were devastated. 4-player co-op throughout the entire campaign, meaning you could play as Marcus, Dom, Cole, and Baird simultaneously. New weapons like the Retro Lancer with its charge bayonet, the sawed-off shotgun, and the digger launcher that tunneled underground to attack enemies behind cover. The Lambent enemies exploded when killed, forcing you to rethink cover strategies. You couldn't just hide behind the same wall for the entire fight. The multiplayer was the most refined in the series. Maps like Checkout, Thrashball, and Sandbar became instant classics. The weapon balance between the Gnasher and the Sawed-Off created a shotgun meta that rewarded both precision and positioning. But honestly, Horde Mode 2.0 was the real star. Base building, currency systems, boss waves every 10 rounds, and the ability to play as Locust characters in Beast Mode, where you played as the monsters trying to kill human defenders. Gears 3 sold over 3 million copies on launch day and was universally praised as the perfect send-off for the original trilogy. It proved that you could end a beloved series on a high note, something that many franchises fail to achieve.
Gears of War Judgment, 2013. The experiment nobody asked for. Gears of War Judgment came out in March 2013 and was the prequel that tried to fix things that weren't broken. Set 14 years before the first Gears of War, you play as Damon Baird and his Kilo Squad, including Augustus Cole and 2 new characters, Garen Paddock and Sophia Hendrick. They're on trial for disobeying orders during the early days of the Locust emergence, and the campaign unfolds through flashbacks. And honestly, this felt like filler. The emotional weight of the previous games was gone, because we knew all these characters survived to fight another day. This is where People Can Fly, the developers who took over from Epic Games, made controversial changes. The control scheme was different. Y button for switching weapons instead of quick weapon selection. The difficulty modifiers, called declassified missions, added optional challenges but broke up the flow of combat. Free-for-all mode and smaller map design tried to make Gears more like Call of Duty, but it lost what made Gears special. The maps were designed for faster gameplay, but Gears was never supposed to be fast. It was supposed to be tactical and brutal. Overrun mode, where one team played as Locust trying to destroy objectives while humans defended, was actually innovative, but it couldn't save the overall package. Judgment proved that not every beloved franchise needs annual releases. It sold poorly compared to the main trilogy, and showed that changing core mechanics to chase trends usually backfires. And honestly, most fans pretend this one doesn't exist. Gears of War 4, 2016. The Next Generation. Gears of War 4 launched in October 2016 as an Xbox One exclusive, and was Microsoft's attempt to restart the franchise with the Coalition taking over development. 25 years after Gears 3, you play as J.D. Fenix, Marcus' son, alongside Kait Diaz and Delmont Del Walker. They're fighting against the authoritarian COG government that's rebuilding human civilization. But then a new enemy appears, the Swarm, evolved descendants of the Locust Horde. The campaign brought back Marcus Fenix in a supporting role, and honestly, seeing him as a grizzled father figure trying to reconnect with his son added emotional depth the new trilogy needed. The wind flare storms created dynamic environmental hazards, lightning strikes that could kill enemies, tornadoes that changed map layouts, and debris that you could use tactically. New weapons like the Buzzkill, a saw blade launcher, and the Drop Shot, a drilling explosive, felt distinctly Gears while adding tactical options. Multiplayer. The return of classic modes like King of the Hill and Dodgeball, plus new modes like Arms Race. Maps like Foundation and Harbor were designed with the classic Gears flow in mind. Long sight lines for rifle battles and close quarters areas for shotgun duels. Horde Mode 3.0 added class-based characters with unique abilities and skill cards that could be upgraded with microtransactions. And honestly, this is where things got messy with the monetization. Cultural impact. Gears 4 sold well and proved that the franchise could continue without Epic Games. It was a safe sequel that honored the original trilogy while setting up new storylines, but it played things too cautiously to be revolutionary. Gears 5, 2019. The bold direction change. Gears 5 released in September 2019 and was the Coalition's attempt to prove they could innovate, not just iterate. Story/campaign. For the first time in the series, you don't play as a Marcus Fenix. Instead, Kait Diaz is the protagonist, discovering her connection to the Locust Queen and uncovering the truth about her heritage. The story explores themes of identity and legacy, while introducing semi-open world exploration sections. Jack, the floating robot companion, became a full co-op character with unique abilities, and, honestly, people got genuinely attached to a robot that could revive teammates and shock enemies. The skiff sections, driving across ice lakes and desert landscapes, were divisive, but showed the Coalition was willing to experiment. Ultimate abilities for each character in co-op created more distinct playstyles. New weapons, like the Breaker Mace, a massive electrified hammer, and the Cryo Cannon added variety to combat encounters. The return of classic characters as playable skins was fan service done right. Maps like District and Training Ground captured the tactical flow of classic Gears. But the microtransaction controversy around character unlocks damaged the game's reputation at launch. Horde Mode introduced character ultimates and more RPG-like progression, while Escape Mode, 3-player co-op missions where you had to escape procedurally generated swarm hives, was a genuinely fresh take on Gears co-op. Gears 5 was included with Xbox Game Pass on day one, making it accessible to millions of players. It proved that the franchise could evolve beyond its original formula while maintaining its core identity.
Looking back, Gears of War was the franchise that proved cover-based shooters could be both tactical and emotionally devastating. It showed that Xbox could have mature, story-driven exclusives that rivaled anything on PlayStation, and it created a template for third-person action games that's still being used today. From the revolutionary first game to the experimental Judgment, to the current generation's attempts to honor the past while building something new, Gears has always been about more than just chainsaws and testosterone. It's been about brotherhood, sacrifice, and the cost of survival. The current state? Gears is in Microsoft's capable hands with the Coalition, included in Game Pass, and still attracting millions of players. The franchise proved that even the toughest soldiers can have the biggest hearts, and sometimes the most important victory is just making it home to the people you love. And honestly, that chainsaw bayonet will never get old.